Hello, it's David again, and I'm here with my good friend Brian Stutzman, and he's got some wonderful details that are a supplement to Come Follow Me DNC 135 from last Sabbath about the martyrdom of Joseph and Hyrum Smith. And so, anyway, you can see the thumbnail below us here. They actually lost the bodies of Joseph and Hyrum for 50 years, and then something interesting happened once they found them. And so, Brian's going to share some wonderful, interesting historical nuggets about the martyrdom of Joseph and Hyrum. So this is wonderful historical nuggets with Brian Stutzman. Say hello, Brian, and take it
Well,
away.
thank you, Dave. It's good to be with you again. Um, in the summertime, my wife and I have been blessed to have our own museum in Nauvoo. It's a free museum, and we've talked about it on your show a couple times. Would love to have any of your guests come out in the summertime. That's an artist rendition of our new signage that has been approved by the city of Nauvoo. We'll have it up this summer. And as we've had this museum, different people have come in with different stories and information, and we've gathered some. So let's maybe do a quick dive into the Doctrine and Covenants 135, the martyrdom. Um, what happened is that that's what we're studying, Come Follow Me, but there's only 45 minutes and so much material. So we'll get some supplemental information. Doctrine and Covenants 135, of course, is written right after the martyrdom. The Doctrine and Covenants 1844 edition had already been printed. They took 35 and 135, made it into a little pamphlet, and glued it in the back of each edition as it was distributed. It basically tells maybe what we would call the inside story, the story from the inside. John Taylor, Willard Richards were inside. Joseph of Hyrum was, of course, shot almost immediately. Joseph actually opens the door, and he not only has one gun, but he has two. But he takes his pepper box 6 shooter that Cyrus Wheelock has snuck in, and he shoots it down the stairs to defend and protect John Taylor, Willard Richardson himself. Uh, the reports are he shot 6 times, 3 bullets jammed, 3 bullets went off. Nobody was killed. Um, and what happened was after that, he jumps to the window, and the window's 16 feet off the ground. And so it's kind of a jump off. He kind of hangs there for a little bit, yelling. He's very much alive. He yells, "Oh Lord, my God," which is the beginning of the Masonic cry for help. Ironically, Nauvoo's Masonic Lodge had chartered and sponsored the Warsaw uh, Lodge, Warsaw being 18 miles south of Nauvoo, and Warsaw was where the mob was from. And so they knew Joseph, they knew the Masonic cry for help. They ignored it. Joseph fell to the ground. Willard Richards, or excuse me, Willard Richards looks over the window. He thinks Joseph's dead. Joseph's actually not. And what happens is Levi Williams, or technically his name was Levy Williams, he was in charge of the whole state militia. He's from nearby Green Plains, just real close to Warsaw. He commands 4 people to take their guns and line Joseph Smith up against the well. They shoot him dead there at the well.
That's what this
The,
is a little
that
woodcut.
that that woodcut, yeah, I believe that's from the first book actually written about the martyrdom. There's several pamphlets, and of course, John Taylor had a little booklet, a talk, 2 minutes in the Carthage, the 2 minutes, and in 1882, Lyman Littlefield wrote the first complete book on it. It's called The Martyrs, and it was published in Salt Lake, and I believe this woodcut is from that. And so they shoot him, and somebody comes up, and the one reason we know this, there's multiple accounts of this, okay, but the court case where people stood trial for the murder of Joseph Smith was called the People versus Levy Williams, or Levi Williams is how we would pronounce it today. And his 4 people in the stood trial, 5 people total, but 4 people shot him. And what happened next, and again, there's multiple accounts, was somebody came with a Bowie knife to cut Joseph's head off because there was a bounty for Joseph's head out of Missouri, and a flash of light came from heaven and preserved Joseph from being decapitated and mutilating the body. One of the first, yeah, there's a flash of light. And so what happened was that one of the first people to talk about it was a guy named William Daniels. And William Daniels was not a member of the church, and he just happened to be in Warsaw, and he got conscripted into the militia, didn't know quite what's going on. He tried to actually go out ahead of it and warn Joseph and Hyrum ahead of the mob coming from Warsaw through Golden's Point down over to Carthage, and he didn't make it in time. So he observed this, and he came back to Nauvoo. He actually joined the church, was really impressed, moved spiritually. The Spirit impressed upon him that this was a prophet that just had been killed. He wrote a little pamphlet and joined the church. And the next year, there was a trial held. Now, 9 people were indicted October of 1844 by a grand jury, 9 people for the murder of Joseph Smith. And what happened was that only 5 people showed up at the trial. And it was said that the 4 people who didn't show up, 3 of them had wounds from Joseph's gun in the stairway of the Carthage jail. And we know who they were. Morris, Gallagher, Willis were the 3 that were shot, according to some accounts. So Williams is in Nauvoo, and there's this trial going to happen. And the prosecutor, Hosea Lambert, goes to Nauvoo, and he tries to find people to come and testify against the people that were charged, basically the mob and their friends. The friends were in the audience. Brigham Young said, hey, look, Joseph and Hyrum weren't safe there. There's no way we should go. Taylor and Richard should not go, Elder Taylor and Elder Richards. But Hosea got Lambert, got William Daniels, and a young lady named Eliza Graham we'll talk about next. And the mob found out Williams was going to testify and offered him equivalent, about $2,500, about equivalent of $90,000 today. And they said, look, we'll pay you $90,000 if you don't show up. Well, he did. He joined the church, by the way, between the time of the martyrdom and the trial. And he goes and testifies, and they discount his testimony for a couple of reasons. And a couple months later, he disappears, never to be heard of again. Some people might remember Jimmy Hoffa was a mafia member, something that disappeared. Well, that same thing happened to William Daniels. The second person to testify was Eliza Graham. But before we do that, William Daniels gave us this account of the flashlight. Other people we know, but Mary Rollins Lightner, she collected the pages from her and her sister in 1831 in Independence, Missouri, the Book of Commandments pages, her and her sister hid in a cornfield. Well, in 1844, she was 10 miles north of Nauvoo. And we know the mob came from Warsaw, but there were other people around. And the night of the martyrdom, some people came in and said, we just saw a flashlight from heaven. She wrote it in her journal. So we have 2 primary accounts. At the commemoration this year in Carthage, we were out there June 27th. The church had a historian named Adam Petty. He spoke at the martyrdom ceremony at the commemoration, and he mentioned the delight also from William Daniels' account. There's 3 or 4 others. So we have this, and by the way, there's a flute, a pewter flute, that's lead and some other materials. The account is that after Joseph was killed, somebody came up and hit Joseph on the head, a young man, claiming that he had been the son of Governor Boggs, and this was for his daddy. I think it's he wasn't Governor Boggs' son. That was just an excuse. Anyway, so that's the martyrdom, and we get to the trial. Later, we talked about how 9 people were charged. Let's talk about Eliza Graham real quick. She's the most brave, the bravest woman in church history you've never heard of before. And one of my goals at the museum, as well as the talks we give, and I've mentioned her on your program before, David, is that she was an 18-year-old waitress that worked for her aunt and her uncle Sam and Ann Fleming at the Warsaw House, which was a hotel and a restaurant 18 miles south of Nauvoo on the Mississippi River. And that is the town that the mob came from and returned to. And the night of the martyrdom, a crowd grew to about 40 to 50 people. that night, and they were all from mob members, and they were bragging about they had just killed Joseph Smith. They were arguing over whose gun it was that finished him off. And Eliza, being 18 years old, a member of the church, she was, first of all, must have been in shock. And second of all, she gathered herself and memorized who said where, what they said, and how they said it. The next year, she testified at the trial. And she recited to the jury who said where, what they said, and how they said it. Now, the defense attorneys dismissed William Daniels' account as being too fanciful. He had also been selling a story in a pamphlet, and he didn't have a job. He was a loafer. And so they discounted his testimony. When it came to Eliza Graham, they didn't know what to do with this firsthand witness to the mob confessing that night to the crime of killing Joseph and Hyrum. And so they just discounted her because she remembered too much. And that was a later account by a guy named John Hayes, who was President Lincoln's secretary. He wrote an account in the Atlantic Monthly magazine in 1869. We have that account there at the museum. And Eliza ended up going west with the Saints and living very faithfully. And she actually died in childbirth out in Wyoming. Kind of a long story there. We have her story at the museum. She's got faithful members that are her descendants. Her fourth child, Sadie, is she died. Sadie lived. The mom didn't. Wonderful, brave story. Could you imagine being 18 years old and serving people at a restaurant that came in bragging about killing a religious figure, as well as most people don't realize Joseph Smith at the time was running for president of the United States. And we had campaign missionaries all out over the whole country. And there's only 23 states at the time. And a lot of people thought that Joseph Smith, if he didn't win the election, would at least influence and control the election, kind of a third party spoiler if he didn't win this time. He had some awesome ideas. So it was a very important trial, and Eliza and William were very important witnesses. So let's talk about what happened after they died. Any questions so far?
No, no, I'm just
Okay,
enjoying your
narrative.
historical
So, so the bodies were brought back to Nauvoo, and there, we could get into the minute by minute, hour by hour,
Can
but
you answer a simple question? I know you
oh,
have some of the first generation death masks of
yeah.
Joseph and Hyrum there in your museum. When
Mhm.
would those have been made?
The day that they got back from Nauvoo, excuse me, Carthage to Nauvoo,
Okay.
they the next day, the bodies were brought back in ice. We could probably spend 2 hours talking about the mechanics of them, but they had death masks made, which is common for relatively famous, well-known people. They didn't have cameras to take pictures of, or so it's more of a sculpture type. And we do have a first generation. We're very fortunate. You can get death masks of Joseph and Hyrum all over the internet for sale, but they're replicas and third and fourth, fifth generations. But we got a first generation made from the original. And what happened was they viewed, if you look at Nauvoo down in the flats, this is the property that we bought from the Community of Christ. Parley Street runs east and west. Water Street runs north and south. You've got and this becomes important just a little bit. You've got the Mansion House on one corner, you've got the Nauvoo House on another, you've got the homestead on the other. Well, the Smiths lived there in the homestead till about the end of July, mid-July of 1843, when they moved over across the kitty corner to the Mansion House. The bodies were brought back and put on public display. 5 to 10,000 people came through. Emma was particularly concerned about the bodies being mutilated, so she had the bodies hid in the corner of the Mansion House. Excuse me, of the Nauvoo House, which is south of the Mansion House. They took wooden coffins and put sandbags in it and took it up by the temple and had a public funeral. And there was a tomb made, and some people believe it was right there on temple ground. Joseph's body never made it to the tomb of Joseph. There's a museum there in Nauvoo kitty corner from the temple called the Tomb of Joseph that kind of explains this. And it's another free museum run by a friend of mine, Joseph Johnson, wonderful, very smart historian. So the bodies never made it there. The bodies were hidden. And then here's the really unique story. The bodies were lost for 50 years almost.
Wow.
And what happened was Emma, there's some accounts that the bodies may have been put up on a farm. They were eventually buried south of the homestead by a little cupola type building called the Bee House. And now Hyrum's wife, his first wife died in childbirth in 1837, and he married later Mary Fielding Smith, and she went with Brigham Young out west. And Hyrum and Mary were the parents of Joseph F. Smith, who we mentioned had the vision that's Doctrine and Covenants 137, which we'll be studying this week. So that's Hyrum's son, and who's what, a great grand Elder Ballard's a third great grandson, I believe, from Joseph F. Smith through Hyrum, second, third. Anyway, so what happened was Emma didn't want the bodies desecrated, and she died in 1879, and nobody knew exactly where the bodies were buried. Someplace south of the homestead, but they were lost. And the Mississippi River plays a very important part, especially in the 1840s, 1850s, whatever, of this part of the country. There are the Des Moines Rapids, and most of the year you could not get past Des Moines Rapids in a river traffic, only during the spring high water mark. And we tell a lot about that at the museum, at least some. And what happened was that in 1913, they built the Keokuk Dam, and it was the second largest engineering feat in the world behind the Panama Canal at the time. It was massive. It's still massive. And they built on the locks in the 1950, let's say 1950, 1954. But it's big even if you go today. And the water behind it, Lake Cooper, started rising. And that was in 1913. And if you go to Nauvoo today, the river is about possibly 30 to 40 feet higher than it was when the pioneers lived there in the 1840s. And the family, they'd moved from, Lamoni, Iowa, down to Independence by that time with the reorganization, the family of Joseph Smith. And they were with the RLDS Church at the time, now Community of Christ, in the Independence, Missouri area, and they learned that the water was coming up, and there was some fear that the rising river would wash away the bodies, but nobody knew where they were. And in 1928, the Smith family, as well as the reorganized church at the time, commissioned a group to come to Nauvoo and to find the bodies and to relocate them just to keep them from being washed away. And they could not find it. They spent days and days and days. They had an allotted time. They didn't know what to do. They fasted, they prayed. The whole community, which was mostly Catholics by that time, and other, the French Icarians had come in just for a few years. Other people came and backfilled Nauvoo. And the whole town got together and they fasted and prayed that the bodies of Joseph and Hyrum could be found because they were lost for 49 years. Okay. We're doing this as a supplement to Come Follow Me this week, which is 135. They simply don't in 45 minutes have time to talk about all these things. That's what we're talking about now. But on the very last day, the party found the bodies of Joseph and Hyrum. It was a miracle, an answer to their prayers. So they took a lot of pictures and they reinterred the bodies to their present location. They had different headstones at the time. They took pictures. Eventually, they put the current one on that you're showing. It shows Joseph in the middle, Emma on one side, and Hyrum on the other side. Well, a friend of mine, Shannon Tracy, started looking at these pictures a number of years ago, ran them through computer analysis, and discovered that they inadvertently misidentified Hyrum and put Hyrum in the middle where Joseph is, and Joseph where Hyrum is, and Emma is in the correct spot. And so they said in death, they said in life, sometimes Hyrum got between Joseph and Emma, and in death, he's between them now. Okay. So a while back, when a year, almost 2 years, we bought the properties from the community Christ, right? And we own the rebuilt red brick store. We own the mansion house. We own the homestead. And we're very grateful for the community Christ and the efforts they put in for these properties. And they're still open to them. We just have ownership now. We take care of them. Where this Smith family cemetery is, though, the Smith family has always owned it. And we maintain it for them. And the Smith family has decided, at least to the best of my knowledge, not to remove and dig up and move the bodies to the proper spot. What's really interesting too, that you won't maybe hear this in a lot of places, is when they rebuilt the red brick store in 1980, 1984, and I think it was 1980, the original store had been uh, worn down and destroyed, and the reorganized church, the Community of Christ, rebuilt that. And when they were doing some utility work, they found that there were 25 burial sites of Native Americans, probably out of the Hopewell era. And people believe that the Nephites, people who believe that a lot of the Book of Mormon happened in the Nauvoo area, and there's quite a few indications of why that could be so, believe that Joseph is actually now buried in a Nephite burial ground. That's the belief of that, because it's really, they found 25 burial spots by the red brick store, which is right next to the Smith family cemetery. So I would just invite, there's a couple stories there. We talked about the flash of light from heaven. We talked about William Daniels. We talked about Eliza Graham. We talked about the lost 50 years that we did not know where the bodies exactly, where the bodies of Joseph and Hyrum were. And now we do, and they're in the wrong spot. And we'd like to invite anybody to come out where they're in the summer. It's a free museum. That's what our mock-up of the new artwork for the signage outside is going to look like. We're blocked from the temple. And David would like to invite you and your wife. And what we'd also like to just tell you, there are people who are planning right now. The city of Nauvoo Tourism does some studies. They found most people that come out start planning summer vacations about December, January. Maybe you're looking at Disney World. Maybe you're looking at, some other family site. Please consider bringing your family to the church history sites in Hancock County, which would be Nauvoo, uh, possibly Warsaw, and Carthage. And there's a spirit of Nauvoo that is real. There's a spirit of the restoration. And when we talk about going to Carthage, I actually ask people to end there. You can't, it's really anticlimactic to go someplace else. And here we have the place, the martyrdom. And we talk about the martyrdom. I mentioned that Joseph had guns to protect him, and they say, well, could he be a martyr? Well, the correct terminology, the definition of martyr is actually witness. It doesn't mean you crawl into a ball in the corner of the Carthage jail bedroom and let everybody shoot you to death. That's not what a martyr is. A martyr is somebody who lives and dies for their testimony, in this case, the testimony of Jesus Christ and the testimony of restoration. And Joseph and Hyrum died as martyrs. And we use that panel out of Praise to the Man song. He died as a martyr, as some of the artwork on our building here. So invite everybody to come out. Invite you, David, and your wife to come out, and we'd love to have you.
Thank you so much. Gosh, that's some interesting supplemental historical information about the martyrdom of Joseph and Hyrum, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us.
All right.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm just going to close with a little prayer. Heavenly Father, we're so grateful and thankful for Brian and his wife and their hard work in fleshing out some of these things that are less well known, and for putting up this free museum, Martyrdom Museum in Nauvoo. Just ask that you bless them, and that you just continue to help us all progress in being everything that you need us to be And we just ask these things in the name of thy beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Thanks. That's great.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. And we'll look forward to seeing you again sometime soon.
Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints actually is the only true church on the earth.
That's right.
More times than I can count, I heard slander spoken against like it was absolute gospel truth and impossible to refute. But the truth is that you're believing that the most beautiful thing on earth is a cult, and that only a fool would believe otherwise. And that's why it took me till I'm 68 years old, man, to even take the Ark of God, the holy city, the Church of Jesus Christ, restored on the earth with true apostles and prophets, the most beautiful men to follow on the whole planet, to even look at them and give them a listen. It took me 47 years. I spent 47 years trying to find what was right there in front of me, man.
President Nelson promised us that we would see the
greatest manifestations of the Savior's power that the world has ever seen. He will bestow countless privileges, blessings, and miracles upon the faithful.
This man, finding the restored gospel truths that he's been seeking for 47 years, is one of those miracles. And there are millions of people out there just like David, honest seekers of truth, who are only kept from the truth because they know not where to find it. Lost in the accusatory fog, as David puts it. Not even thinking to give Latter-day Saints a serious thought. But we know where to find it. We are enjoying the fruits of it. The question is, are we sharing it?
Just a reminder, if you like the video, if you like what we're doing, please try to remember, hit like, hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, and also hit the notification bell so when we put something out, you get a little notification of it. Love you all. Bye-bye.